you'll see America's favorite sport on WHBQ television.
Talking Memphis Wrestling with Randy Hill and special guests.
It's the June 10th, Talking Memphis Wrestling, and hello again, everybody. I'm Randy Hales, right along ringside, all ready to go with Talking Memphis Wrestling, year number 6. We're right into it, about halfway through, and we welcome all of you to the show. Richard Hood and PJ in Thailand, Calvin, Lindsay from Mississippi, Randy Dandy, Randy West is from Hendersonville, Tennessee, people far and wide. You can tell if you watched last week, a different type of Randy Hills, a different RH, a depressed RH, a crazy RH, in shock RH. And thank God for the good Dr. William Robinson, because I figured out a minute into the show that I could not hear nothing. My speakers quit. They're still broke, but now I dug out my headsets and we're rolling with it. It's first take time on a loaded show. We will celebrate an anniversary of a wrestling event coming up later from 30 years ago. Cards from 58. Cards from the 60s, cards from the 70s and the 80s, and of course, our anniversary from 95. It's a loaded show, and we won't first take time. We'll start with Pat Trammell, the original co-host of Talking Memphis Wrestling. Hello, Patrick.
Well, hello, everybody. Richard, thank you for telling us, keeping us updated on Jerry Oates. The Oates brothers were in Birmingham as a babyface tag team in my youth, but I've looked at what we're going to see tonight, and we're gonna reach way back. We're gonna reach back before me and you, Randy. Uh, and I had an interesting day yesterday on a personal note. Yesterday was would have been my father's 100th birthday.
Oh my goodness.
So I went and visited with him, talked to him a little bit, and he responded, so that was good. So anyway, it was a good day. Glad I did that.
Everybody's saying hello to you, so hello to Pat.
Hey, hey, Bo. Hey, Richard. Hello to everybody.
And Pat, I want you to go ahead and read Bo's comment.
Yeah, Bo's asked that we thank everybody for the prayers last week, and Seymour service went great, and hundreds of people came, and many stayed, and please continue prayers for the family. And we're a small, tight community, and when you lose one of our own, it's a hard thing. But blessings to him and his family, and everybody that he loved and loved him.
Packed show today. Don't know if I can get in 2 hours. However, Michael St. John, who takes up a lot of talk time, he's not here today. So it's up to Pat Trammell, myself, Dr. Robinson, and the person we're bringing in now from the other side of the state of Arkansas, not too far away from Southside Arkansas, near Batesville, Arkansas. I don't know if I'm even allowed to say that word. But anyway, welcome to the show. After a couple of weeks, here's Assistant Superintendent Chris Ellis.
Hey, RH, everybody. Great to be back. My first take, I'm going to kind of piggyback off Pat. Father's Day is this Sunday coming. If you still have your father, make sure you spend time with them. My precious mom has already been gone 2 months today. I mean, 8 weeks has gone by in a blip. Everybody told me as I aged, time would go faster, and no doubt, time flies. When we look at today's program and going back to these cards and things, these matches from the past, how many years it's hard to fathom that it's been that many years. And so just take time to appreciate the moments and take time to appreciate your parents.
Now, I want to, thanks to Adam Dunn, the producer, we have a live shot, maybe not a live shot, but a recent photo. We'll explain to you what Michael St. John is doing. Pat, help me with all the audio here. What's our guy doing and where is he?
Michael is at Toyota Field in Huntsville, Alabama, and he and Joshua are throwing out the first pitch for the Huntsville AA team, one of the finest names in AA baseball, and $5 for anybody that can define what this is. The Huntsville Trash Pandas. Who knows what a trash panda is?
I don't.
I'm guessing a raccoon.
That's correct. Absolutely.
Hey,
You win the
RH,
pony, Chris.
RH, I got a piece of trivia for you.
Okay.
The skipper of the Huntsville Trash Pandas is from Paragould, Arkansas.
Oh,
Let
my
me say
goodness.
this. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, to tell everybody, Paragould, Arkansas, people in Thailand does not know, it's 22 miles from Jonesboro, Arkansas. Go ahead, Pat.
Adam corrected me. It's not technically the Huntsville Trash Pandas. It's the Rocket City Trash Pandas. Huntsville being the Rocket City.
There you go. Adam, that thrills Adam to death to do his producer stuff, and he usually corrects me, so I'm glad he's correcting you, Pat. That makes me feel good.
If Adam likes to correct people, then he's got the right co-host in me.
We'll go to New Orleans, Louisiana. Fresh off last week's Bigfoot hunt in the state of Alabama, let's welcome to the show William, a.k.a. Rusty, a.k.a. Dr. Robinson. Hey, Rusty, what is going on with you, and welcome to the show tonight.
Hi, Randy. Thanks for having me. Hi, Chris and Pat, everybody in the chat. Actually, I'm in Orange Beach right now, but I did go on the Bigfoot hunt this weekend, which was lots of fun. We went up to a primitive campground in the Talladega Forest in kind of east central Louisiana in the foothills of the mountains. And it was great fun. It's hot, but it was lots of fun. Everybody has asked me, did you see anything? And I have to say, I did not. I didn't hear or see anything. I do know there's another podcast that's going on contemporary with us called Squatch and Holler that has some film that was video that was taken at this hunt this weekend that's supposed to be pretty interesting, but I have not seen it yet, so I can't tell you. So anyway, we had a great time, even if I didn't see anything.
Rusty, and you said Louisiana, but you meant Alabama. What town were you closest to?
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's in east central Alabama. I'm sorry. We're probably closest to Sylacauga.
Okay.
It's actually in the Talladega National Forest, and specifically, it's in the Hollins Wildlife Management Area.
Okay, you were in Hollins. Okay, I know. I'm from that county.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Well, you know what I think would be a good outing for us? A live remote, Randy.
What's that?
We need to go look for lost wrestlers.
Lost wrestlers. Most of them I wouldn't want to find. I don't know if I'd like that at all. There's so many of them out there, but a lot of them I would. By the way, Thomas especially asks me all the time if I've heard from Bill Dundee. Crazy Gail called me yesterday, and at the dinner table with Crazy Gail was the superstar Bill Dundee, and I told him our audience asks about him all the time. So happy birthday, or hello everybody from Willie, the superstar, strong and was doing good. Oh, Willie doing good. Hey, Frank Seaton, what is going on with you? I'm going to get out of order as I start the show. Man, this will be a history lesson galore on Memphis wrestling. a history lesson galore. And I want to start off, and the graphics, Adam, will be on the bottom row here because this is the 30th anniversary of Memphis Memories 2. It took place on a Saturday night. My bad on that. Should have known better than running a big event at on a Saturday night. You would think it would work, and I did it basically to save for airline tickets and have people there for Saturday, Sunday, and fly them out Monday. But it was down from Memphis Memories 1, which did 9,000 people, and this did between 3,500 and 4,000 people. It was Memphis Memories 2, and I'll run over some information. It said that it drew 3,850 people, did $24,000. 94's Memphis Memories did right at 30,000. Legends introductions of Corsica Joe, Eddie and Tommy Gilbert, Gypsy Joe, Jerry Jarrett, Sarah Lee, Eddie Marlin, Frank Morrell, Buddy Wayne, and Jim White. The Memphis Wrestling Hall of Fame inductions of Billy Wicks, Joe LeDuc, Phil Hickerson, several months after his death, Hot Stuff Eddie Gilbert, and the fabulous Jackie Fargo. We're showing pictures with Jackie Fargo with Joe LeDuc and showing pictures of Jackie Fargo with Gypsy Joe. It was a great, great, great night of wrestling, and the card was opening up Mr. World Class, Max Muscle and the Gambler and Gorgeous George, 8-man tag victory over David Haskins, Super Mario, Scott Studd, and King Cobra. Second match, Bullet Bob Armstrong beat Gypsy Joe in 2 minutes and 30 seconds. Billy Jack Haynes' debut defeated Brickhouse Brown in 3:41. And then we had a USWA tag team tournament. We had Tommy Rich and Doug Gilbert defeat Bill Dundee and Brian Christopher. We had Jerry Lawler and Handsome Jimmy Valiant defeat Phil Hickerson and Joe LeDuc in 11 minutes when Lawler pinned Joe LeDuc. It was supposed to be the Moondogs against PG-13, and that's what we had in the opening match there. The Moondogs, Spots, and Rex defeated PG-13 when JC Ice was pinned. The next match was Tommy Rich and Doug Gilbert defeating Jerry Lawler and Jimmy Valiant when Gilbert pinned Valiant. The next match was the Fabulous Ones defeating the Moondogs. And the final match of the night was the Fabulous Ones defeating Rich and Gilbert to win the Best of Memphis Tag Team Championships and tournament. A great night there at the Mid-South Coliseum. We'll start with Rusty.
Boy, that sounds like a great card. I did not make it for that. I knew that it occurred, although I was unfamiliar with the details. So did that happen in the Mid-South Coliseum, Randy?
Yes, the house the king built, the Mid-South Coliseum, and we will show that great graphic, Adam, if you would, of the king sticking his head out of the Mid-South Coliseum, and that's one of my favorite pictures of all time. Yes, Rusty, that happened at the Mid-South Coliseum.
Very good. You know, one other thing I was just reminded of when you mentioned King Cobra. You know, he was kind of a opening match guy for many years, for the most part, in Memphis. But my understanding was, I can't remember his real name, but he had
Jimmy Kimball.
Okay, yeah, okay. Worked for waste management companies. He developed, this is my understanding, he developed and patented some device that facilitated waste management and made a lot of money off of it. Apparently.
Millions.
Yeah. So he's doing very well. I assume he's still alive. I haven't heard that he's dead.
Yes, he is alive and is affiliated with a local promotion and that we're not friends with in Memphis, Tennessee. Memphis Memories 2. That was also the debut in Memphis of Brandon Baxter. What did you think of that card, Chris?
It was an outstanding card, and that's when I lived in Southwest Arkansas, so I wasn't in this part of the country, or I would have probably been there. But anytime you have those are all what I call Memphis names. Like you hear those names throughout the country, you affiliate them with Memphis. So that would be like the who's who of Memphis on that card, without a doubt.
It was a standby video there, Adam. One of the highlights of the night, and we showed this a few weeks ago, but I think it's timely because it's the 30th anniversary for us to go to video. We'll go back to Memphis Memories 2. We'll go back to the Mid-South Coliseum in Memphis, Tennessee, and the presentation and the acceptance of the Memphis Wrestling Hall of Fame. We'll show that video, and then we'll get comments from the card and the video from Pat Trammell. And we'll watch that video right now.
The often imitated, never duplicated, our last inductee, the fabulous Jackie Fargo. But the fabulous
There you go.
Jackie Fargo. Jackie, come on up here. Looking better every day.
Hello, Tony Monet and my buddy Frank
We're
Seeger.
going to take them all on. Let's hear from our latest inductee and our honoree tonight, the fabulous Jackie Fargo. Jackie!
Thank you, Lance. I didn't think I'd ever be lost for words, but I sure as hell am tonight.
Close your mouth. Close your mouth. Hold that mic close. Real close.
I love you very much, and I thank you all so very much. You know, professional wrestling brought me Hall of Fame, and I'm very proud to have lived my life as a professional wrestler. Very lucky human being to have a wonderful family. Judy is with me tonight, my daughter Brandy and Charlotte, and my little Jennifer. I feel like I'm the luckiest man that ever lived to be a professional wrestler. And I owe it to you, to everyone in this arena, to my enemies, some of them, my friends. What a great, great honor to have been a professional wrestler. I'll never forget you because I'm not made that way. I'll always love you and thank you. And all my friends, I look around, I better get out of here. I'm fixing to cry. I love you very much and God bless you. One last shot for the fans of Memphis, Tennessee.
Pat?
You know, I mean, I've had the opportunity in my life to be around professional athletes and professional wrestlers, and I was business partners with an NFL player for a period of time. And you know, you know, you're around them, and Randy, you have forever, I know, and they're just people and all that. But Jackie Fargo, even at that age, was not just people to me. That
No.
guy has charisma, and I don't know. When I see Jackie Fargo, even on a video, I just kind of take a breath. I don't know. The guy has I mean, he's got charisma at, what was he, 65 years old there? Probably. And still, you know, that strut means something to you.
Without a doubt. Chris, what did you think about that? The card, and also, obviously, you talked about earlier, but that video.
Well, Fargo's like the standard, you know, that strut is nothing like it. I get chill bumps still watching it. I'm 58 now, and he was old then, but people tried to copy it and do it. They couldn't do it like him. And he just, like Pat said, charisma. He just had it. He had the it factor. People would come see him, you know, if he was the only name on the card, he'd still put butts in his seats because people just wanted to see him and hear him. They loved to hear. I remember him sitting on the couch doing interviews when he was, when Stan and Steve were the Fabs, and he just did an interview, and it was captivating. He just had the it factor.
Pat?
To just reiterate what Chris said, that it factor is something I don't know, you can't really define, but you know, I, I sit here and think, and I understand, Lawler's influence and Jerry Jarrett and all that, but would there have been a Memphis Wrestling as we know it today without Jackie Fargo?
No, without a doubt.
So,
Yeah,
RH, I have a question. He was in the Memphis Memories too when he went in the Hall of Fame. He didn't go in with the first group.
no, we could not get him that night. He was living in the we tried, but we just couldn't get it.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I figured he would have been there. I knew there had to be a reason. So
Yeah, and so the major inductees on Memphis Memories one was Lance Russell and Sputnik Monroe, and this year was Jackie Fargo and Billy Wicks. I mean, that Fargo is just something, Rusty.
Oh yeah, boy, Jackie Fargo was just a superstar in Memphis. It was fascinating. I remember just maybe 10 years ago, there was a poll online that was available to people from Memphis or interested in Memphis about who was the most popular athlete in Memphis history. And Jackie Fargo won it over any of the Memphis Grizzlies, anybody else you can think of, which was just fascinating. He had a status in Memphis that was unheard of anywhere else in the country.
And what's fascinating about that is most people in Memphis were not alive when he was wrestling.
Very true.
That is fascinating, man. We are going in a few minutes have cards starting in the 50s, and we've already talked about that card in 1995, but I want to kind of get off track because it has something to do with where Dr. Robinson, the blues doctor, has spent most of his lifetime in New Orleans, Louisiana. Now, earlier in the year, there was a big old press conference, a major press conference. The Rock, they decided this announcement was big enough that The Rock, a member of the TKO, who owns the WWE, if you've been living in a cage and don't know that a cave and don't know that sort of thing. But The Rock made the announcement that WrestleMania 42, WrestleMania number 46 or 42, I think, was going to be in New Orleans, Louisiana. But and we have several graphics that because it's becoming. We've been talking a lot about corporate wrestling and the way it is now. And I think I said last week, and Pat, you remember us talking about it that all the WWE or TKO's cares is the shareholders and it's a corporate situation and they'll go where there's most money and since TKO is based in Las Vegas and we have a couple of graphics. Will New Orleans, who uh, bet or put up a fee of millions of dollars to get WrestleMania 42. That's the first graphic, and then we'll see the second graphic, uh, or the third graphic now, because they're certainly in the last couple of weeks decided to go to WrestleMania Vegas April the 19th and April, or this will be a year from now in 2026. A year from now in 2026, WrestleMania back to Vegas. I want to start with Rusty on this because you, like I said, you live most of your adult life. New Orleans is culture of New Orleans and the party city that New Orleans is and everything that goes with New Orleans. And New Orleans had, I don't know how many Super Bowls, how many WrestleManias, this sort of thing. So I would imagine this is an important deal to New Orleans. So have you heard of any kind of backlash? Any news about this? Do you and
Official,
New Orleans
yeah.
will be mad?
Officially, no. The Greater New Orleans Sports Foundation was the point person or point organization for getting WrestleMania to New Orleans, WrestleMania 26, and they have said nothing officially. Just that it's not going to happen in New Orleans. I have heard no other information coming from the mayor's office or from anywhere else. In the community, you hear people talking about it a little bit. You know, New Orleans has had lots of big events. There's been 10 Super Bowls, 2 WrestleManias. There's a Sugar Bowl every year. There's been several Final Fours there. And we have Mardi Gras every year. So New Orleans is very good at hosting big events. And they're very good at competing for that, which is what we do. Every time we compete for a Super Bowl, and what we did for WrestleMania, they put up a bid to get WrestleMania and said, we're going to provide this, this, and this amount of money, blah, blah, blah. And our WWE then chose New Orleans over other cities to place WrestleMania. But then it was taken away without any kind of a competitive process, which, I guess I understand it because, they're serving their shareholders. I mean, I get that. Just it is kind of disappointing. WrestleMania in New Orleans was always fun. I've met several guys at various WrestleManias. I ran into Michael Hayes, who was one of my favorites. Now I can't remember which one it was. I think it was the first WrestleMania that was in New Orleans. I talked to him for a long time, and he was just nice as he could be. So I'm a little disappointed. I think a number of people are, but there's no official, recrimination or anything like that. They want to keep it or keep a good relationship with
Yeah, it's been
WWE
they
and TKO, and they're going to get what's called a Money in the Bank match at some point. I don't know the dates on that, and apparently TKO told them New Orleans can stay in the running for other WrestleManias after this.
absolutely. Chris, I have a question for you. And Pat and I have been talking about getting our crew together to go to New Orleans and sleep on Rusty's couch in his condo that he still keeps in New Orleans. We'd have a high old time. But Chris, my question for you, Las Vegas or New Orleans? If you were part of the Talking Memphis Wrestling Convention, where would you rather go?
Well, Doc's not going to like it, but I'd go to Vegas. I go to Vegas every time. And but I mean, I think New Orleans was smart not to say anything. You don't burn bridges in the business world, but it's always about the money. Everybody can say it's about this or that. It's always about the money. It always comes down to money. And to be honest with you, to me, it epitomizes where we are in the wrestling business, going back to the territory days. Why did Vince get all the talent and all that? Because he wanted all the money. It was better for the fans when there was 33 regional territories and more wrestlers could work for a living and share the wealth. People aren't interested in that. They want all the money. So whatever Vegas is paying them, rest assured, it's more than what New Orleans was paying them.
I would bet that too. Now we go to the person who does finance for a living, and this is a big deal. And Pat, I don't know if you're aware of that fact that they announced WrestleMania in New Orleans, and then all of a sudden they unannounced it. What is your opinion on this mess we have going on?
Well, I don't, again, like the rest of you, I don't even know. I could speculate, but so much as WWE and particularly WrestleMania has gotten bigger. There is number one, it takes a big arena, but number two, for a city, as far as people in the seats, 2 or 3 nights, it's 2 Super Bowls because you're going to sell out for 2 consecutive nights. I guess it's in the Mercedes-Benz Superdome.
Right.
And you get one football game, but 2 nights of WrestleMania. Now, you may not get as many people on the streets, but as you will fill up every hotel in the French Quarter and then a good bit, and people will spend lots and lots of money. Now, as it, from an economic standpoint, the city of Las Vegas could buy the city of New Orleans and Birmingham and Memphis tomorrow afternoon and never miss the money. So they're able, if it's a purely competitive bid process, and most of the time I've been involved in industry associations that did conventions and did these kinds of things. And you don't want to stay on one side of the country. You want to move it around the country. But the Las Vegas Convention Bureau has more money than they are well funded by the casinos because if the Southern Baptist Convention was up for bid, the city of New Orleans might not be interested. But a WWE wrestling fan that's going to buy a plane ticket and $300 ticket, which the close tickets are now to a WrestleMania, they're going to do some gambling, and that is the city of Las Vegas's inside straight on getting shows, musicians, acts, all of that stuff.
I want to appreciate everybody watching tonight, and I thought it was a interesting thing. We'll do another local or modern wrestling thing in a little bit toward the end of the show. We want to get to the heart and soul of this show right now. But big controversy. Last week we announced R-Truth had been released from the WWE, and the fans protested, and guess what? He's back, as he showed up in the pay-per-view a few weeks ago and wearing a hoodie, and nobody knew who he was, and kicked old John Cena right in the nuts. But now he's being called Ron the Truth Killings, and we'll talk about that a little later on as we complete this show. We'll do our first spotlight card of the week, and we will go to first card that's up there. It is 4089. 4089 is the number, Adam. This is Jackson, Tennessee. This is June of 1958. This was not at the Jackson Coliseum or the Oman Arena where you went with me to matches, Chris. This is at the National Guard Armory. Pat, our money guys, the ticket prices were 25 cents, 75 cents, and $1. The opening match of the night was Tex Riley against Tor Yamato. The next match was Princess Tamaya against Corinne Kadera, and the main event was a Russian death match. Promoter Roy Welch, then in 1958 a wrestler living in the Dyersburg, Tennessee area, Roy Welch in a Russian death match against Nikita Mokovich, who I've never heard of Nikita Mokovich, but I've heard of Roy Welch. And we'll start first with Chris Ellis, and this was several years before you were born, but I love these old cards, Chris.
Oh, I do too. The history of it's really cool. A typical three match card. Interesting that there's women on this card in 1958, and the bell time is 8:15, which in my mind I'm thinking that's late, but in probably an agricultural dominant area in 1958, they waited for the sun to go down to start.
You remember when I first started going to matches at the American Legion Arena on Washington and Jonesboro, the match time, the good part of the year, was 8:15. Chris?
Oh yeah, but we grew up in an agricultural area.
Yeah, absolutely.
I never would have thought that. Would never thought anything about that. Thank you, Chris. That's good insight.
Well, the sun goes down about 8:15 or 8:30. Well, the farmer's not coming out of the field to go to the wrestling match if there's still daylight. So it stands to reason that would have been the way that was. I meant to look up the Russian guy there because I'm like Randy. I've never heard of the guy. I meant to look it up, and I failed to do so.
Well,
Let's put that card back up. Put the card back up, please.
he looks familiar to me. Maybe he looks a little like Joe LeDuc. Maybe that's what I'm thinking.
He does sort of.
He kind of does. No doubt about it. Don't you think this is pretty cool? June 4th, 1958 at the National Guard Armory in Jackson, Tennessee. Pat.
That's the earliest card I believe I've seen. Certainly on here. Do you know when wrestling started in Jackson and the area?
I'm thinking the 40s. Late 40s, maybe.
Okay, after the war.
Yeah.
And was Roy Roy Welch the promoter as well here?
I'm sure that he wasn't advertised as the promoter.
Right.
At that point, but yeah, it's just a neat card. How about you, Rusty?
That's pretty much what I understood about the starting of wrestling in that area, that it was about 1948 is what I heard when it started. However, they didn't get TV, at least in Memphis. They didn't get TV until 1959 was what I heard. Randy may know better than me about that.
Channel 5.
And that was the year I was born.
Yeah, Channel 5,
58.
and then it quickly moved to Channel 13. But it's interesting seeing Roy Welch on that card, and it's also interesting to go. I would imagine, I don't know the year, it's the late 50s. It was in Nashville. This card is 4094. This is at the Fairground Coliseum. Again, there's 3 matches. This is not a newspaper ad. This is a old school, old time posters. I've done this a million times in my life. You drive up to a gas station or grocery store, whatever. You go in, says, "Can I put this poster in here?" And it's wrestling. Yes, you can. And this is Nashville, Tennessee, at the Fairgrounds Coliseum, and the opening match is Ken Lucas and Dennis Hall against Buster Gordon and Mighty Yankee. I'm never heard of Buster Gordon. Mighty Yankee, I'm thinking it could have even been Frank Morrell. Maybe Bo James, if he's watching the show today, can let us know that. Ken Lucas and Dennis Hall, of course, very exciting babyface tag team. Then the semifinal match was for the Southern Junior Heavyweight Championship. Lynn Rossi against Tojo Yamamoto.
Look, what year is this, Randy?
1958.
Look at Tojo with the hair and the beard.
Yeah, I like it.
He looking mean, man.
He does.
No doubt about it.
And say, do you notice the evil Japanese has a Nazi manager? This is heel on top of heel.
Absolutely. Southern title, junior title, Lynn Rossi against Tojo Yamamoto. In the main event, a 6-man tag. Don Carson, Red Shadow, and Corsica Joe against the Scufflin' Hillbillies. Nashville, late 58. What do you think, Chris?
Oh, now this is a really good card with some legendary names. Don Carson was older when I actually got to see him work by the time I could remember him. So obviously I wasn't born in 58. Of course, I know I'll get some feedback or pushback on this, but I thought Ken Lucas and Dennis Hall about as vanilla and boring as anybody. Like I never was a fan, and Ken Lucas, every time he was on, I just cringed. But that's just me. I mean, everybody's got their own deal, and I was always a heel guy, and I wanted to beat the hell out of Ken Lucas because I didn't like Ken Lucas.
Well, I heard he was a tough bastard, man. But he bored me as well. And Jerry Jarrett, Pat, didn't really have a reputation. That these were more, Dennis Hall and Ken Lucas was more Nick guys. Jerry Jarrett didn't book Lucas and Hall like Nick would have booked them.
Yeah, Ken Lucas and Dennis Hall were a Birmingham kind of mid-card guys. Probably at this right space on the card. I thought Ken Lucas could work fine. I just he did not have, or Dennis Hall probably had a little more charisma, but they weren't that good on the mic, and they never really got the push.
So compared to what we saw earlier, Pat, I'd rather watch Jackie come to the ring and get a plaque than watch Ken Lucas wrestle.
Is he your 70s era Terry Taylor? Is that what I'm hearing?
He would be similar, except Terry Taylor looked like an athlete, and Ken Lucas was stout and strong. But they need to be a heel with a manager talking for them because zero charisma, none.
Yeah, that's
How can
right.
Terry Taylor be that good looking of a guy and he couldn't talk the panties off any girl? There's no way. Terrible communication skills.
Hey,
Randy, who is this? Who is that on the left of the main event?
I'm not sure. I can't really tell. That's Corsica Joe.
Okay, I didn't realize he was that big.
And that is Don Carson and the red shadow on the right.
Yeah,
And
I
underneath that,
recognize Don Carson.
and underneath that is the scuffling hillbillies. What do you think about the card, Rusty?
The ones I remember the most from this, I'll step back. I can understand where Chris is coming from about Ken Lucas. I didn't think he was that bad either, but I get it. He was wrestling Lawler as late as the 1970s in Memphis, so he lasted a good while with whatever it was he had or didn't have. He lasted a good while in wrestling. I saw in the chat just now, Tony says, what little bit I've seen of Don Carson is great bad guy. And Ricky Morton tributes Ken Lucas with teaching him how to sell, which was interesting. I have heard that before. Ken Lucas was good at selling. He was a good, baby face. So I have to give him that much credit anyway.
7:42 Central Standard Time, and we're going to break away from this card. And our producer Adam Dunn is our roving reporter and doing breaking news right now. And of course, we announced earlier that Michael St. John and his grandson Joshua is throwing the first pitch, and there.
All right.
Joshua with the ball right now. Look at baseball coach Chris Ellis smiling ear to ear.
Yeah.
It's baseball time in America. In just a minute, I'm going to ask Chris what he thinks about the upcoming World Series of College Baseball coming up in Arkansas. The high seed left, and there is our crew right there. The Fun Media Group station, and there's Michael St. John. So our guy is not here in our physical space, but we're spying on him. Adam has his private investigators on the job taking pictures, and so if he does anything goofy, I'll blackmail the hell out of him. I can promise you that. Real quick, Chris, that's backwards.
Well, I can't write forward. She can read it.
No, you couldn't.
Hi, Gail.
Hey,
You can't read that?
Yeah, turn it around.
Hey, Gail.
There you go. Hey,
Okay.
Gail, there you go.
Well, there you go. It works that way. Good job. All right.
Crazy Gail's in the house, and she said hi to me. She didn't give a shit about the other two.
I know.
guys.
I flirt with her continuously. I get nothing.
I've done more than flirted. Ask her.
Well, I don't care anything about that, but
Ask her. Ask her. Bad Bob's, Memphis, Tennessee. Ask her about Interstate 40 with Randy. I hopped out of Randy West's car and forgot to keep the dome light on.
This is a Christian family show, Randy. We don't want to hear your trash.
Hey, I'm a wrestling business guy. Still am. By God, have a hell of a freaking time. Chris, just real quick thoughts. It is certainly baseball time, college baseball World Series, and even though Arkansas didn't really dominate all year, but when it's time to get right, they have got right. They beat up on Tennessee, and they are going in there. And again, they're the high seed that's left in this tournament. So a lot of people are picking them as freight seeding. As Gail says hello to you, she's gonna dump me. And I told Gail, your wife's out of town, by the way. I'd lock your doors because she's been known to stalk.
It's a long drive.
So you think that'd stop her? Anyway, Razorback baseball, Chris. 99% of the people watching this week could care less, but I kind of have a responsibility to cover it, and it's going to be LSU and Arkansas. They play 6 p.m. Saturday night.
Well, my honest opinion, whoever wins at 6 p.m. Saturday night wins the whole thing.
Do you think?
They're the two best teams. You get in a loser's bracket, it depletes your pitching. And the fact that they're on the first round on the bracket is just not a good deal, but that's just the way it goes. But you got to be lucky. Arkansas's got the deepest lineup, and they got the deepest pitching staff. But baseball, I mean, you never know in baseball. Every major league team loses 55 games, guaranteed. So, when you get here, you got to be lucky. I'd love for Coach Van Horn to win one. He's a great coach, good guy. And I think if he wins, he might be getting near the end. So we'd love to see him win. But whoever wins between LSU and Arkansas, and it stays in the winner's bracket side, I think they win it.
When you were talking about saying it's too far for Gail to drive to Birmingham, she says in response, "No, it don't stop me." And I know Crazy Gail. I know Crazy. I'll tell you a funny story. So Bill and Jamie Dundee was leaving to go to Louisville or to Evansville, and so they're going to go outside, and Beverly Dundee, Jamie's mother and Bill's first wife, said, "Jamie, Bill, you can't go. There's a crazy person parked across the street and been stalking us for days." And Jamie said, "Mama, you don't have to worry about her. That's Crazy Gail. As soon as our car leaves this driveway, her car will leave that driveway because she don't give a shit about you or this house or me. She gives a shit about Bill. So where Bill goes, Gail will go. And soon as Bill pulled out that driveway, Crazy Gail was headed to Louisville, Kentucky. I'm sure if Randy West is still listening, he knows the kind of I'm not messing around. I'm not telling the whole stories, and she knows the whole story. So that's interesting enough. The good old wrestling business people wouldn't have missed it for nothing at all. Hey, this is a very interesting card we're going to show next. This is from 1969. I was almost 8 years old at this point. It's 4092. 4092. This is from the world's greatest arena. This is the most famous arena, especially back in the 60s. Back then, it was the old Madison Square Garden. The opening match of the night was Gabor brothers, who I've never heard of in my life. Remember, I was 7 or 8 years old, against Prince Maivia. And I'm thinking that's Peter Maivia, who ended up being High Chief Peter Maivia, who ended up being the grandfather of The Rock.
Yeah.
Prince Maivia in the house, teaming with Johnny Walker and Georgia area boy, Georgia Championship Wrestling boy, Pat Trammell is going to tell you folks who Johnny Walker was.
Johnny Walker became one of the biggest baby faces in the history of Georgia wrestling, and First Lady or the mother of a President Lillian Carter's favorite professional wrestler, Mr. Wrestling number two, who was invited to the White House by the president's mother, but he wouldn't take the mask off so he couldn't come.
That is dedication. That's protecting kayfabe. That's what this business is all about. The next match was Haystack Calhoun, a big guy against Matt Kelly. Then it was Miguel Perez and Bearcat Wright against, it says Jackie and Sonny Fargo. This is Jackie and Roughhouse Fargo. This is before Don Fargo came in. This was about a year before the Fargos against Antonio Rocco and Miguel Perez caused a riot, and Jackie and Don Fargo was banned from New York for the rest of Jackie Fargo's career. For the rest of his career. Then came Nature Boy Buddy Rogers and Sweet Daddy Siki in a single match. In the main event, Pampero Firpo and the Great Antonio against Antonio Rocco, who in the 50s and early part of the 60s were certainly Antonio Rocco, the biggest star. He was teaming with who was the star to be, and that's Bruno Sammartino. And it's cool here. We've got Johnny Walker, and we also have the Fargos, all a big part of Memphis wrestling history. And we'll start with Chris first, and then go to Rusty, and then go to Pat.
Vince Sr. was brilliant for his understanding his ethnicity groups and having representation for all the ethnic groups around New York City. He gave all of them somebody to identify with, relate to, and to come and buy a ticket to watch. And I think he did a great job of that, going back to when, because like Antonio Rocca in the 70s, when we get MSG on USA Network, Randy, you remember that, I'm sure. And it was once a month, but he was working like the opening match and all that. And Vince Sr. took care of him, I guess, because he'd been a big draw forever. But he still had that ethnic group in New York City proper area that came to see him even then. You know, he'd get a huge ovation. And so I think Vince Sr. was brilliant in knowing his audience and understanding how to market his product.
Richard is asking, how long did Johnny Walker work in Tennessee in the early years? Quite in the 60s, quite a lot. Late 60s, quite a lot. Not so much. Just shots for Jerry Jarrett. Just shots. And Al Tuttle was saying Macho Man Randy Savage got his "oh yeah" from Pampero Firpo for sure. We heard from Chris, and now we'll hear from Rusty, then Pat on this exciting card. And I love doing this since we broadened our horizons on this show the last few weeks as we look for cards from all over. This is June the 4th, 1969 in Madison Square Garden, Rusty. Very cool.
Oh, great card. Boy, you can really tell this is a New York-based card also with those names. You know, one thing I didn't realize until you pointed it out, Randy, was Jackie Fargo and Sonny Fargo. Did they precede the team of Jackie and Don Fargo? Because I thought that was the bigger team.
That became the bigger team. That
Yeah.
came the bigger team, yes, without a doubt. And then they had the main event run, and this obviously was not a main event. Now, Don Fargo and Jackie were not related.
Right.
However, Sonny Fargo and Jackie Fargo were real life brothers. How exciting is it to kind of get out of our comfort zone, Pat, and talk about this historic card at Madison Square Garden?
Well, it is interesting, and I've heard this. I've heard this before, as Chris pointed out. You know, Vince Senior, very much catered to the ethnic wrestling fan in New York, and there really wasn't ethnic wrestling fans in the Deep South because there wasn't a lot of ethnicity in the Deep South. I mean, I was an ethnicity because I was a Methodist in my hometown. But anyway, Bo's given us a kind of a rundown on the the Fargo brothers stuff, and one of the things we were talking about Johnny Walker, I don't know if it's true because, like a lot of wrestling people, I think he never let the facts get in the way of a good story. But, Jerry Jarrett takes credit uh, for the Wrestling 2 character.
I
Uh,
believe that. I
yeah.
believe that.
Jim Barnett asked Jerry to go book for him in Atlanta when the house was down. And Jerry says he went to the crowd and said, "Who's your favorite wrestler?" And they said, "Wrestling, Mr. Wrestling." And so he called Tim Woods, who had been in the plane crash, and Woods said, I'm probably done. And Johnny was a good worker on the tail end of his career, not a particularly charismatic guy. And Johnny Walker always looked 70 years old without the mask.
Yes.
So Jerry put the mask on him and called him Wrestling 2, and he started drawing big houses. So all of a sudden, Tim Woods, Mr. Wrestling, decided that maybe working a little bit wasn't so bad. So they had a tag team run.
No doubt about it. We're going to go to your part of the country in Georgia Championship Wrestling before it was officially called that. This is number 4087. This is a famous match, a famous card. It was booked by Buddy Fuller. That's why you see him later on and you look at this card in the main event. This is June the 4th, 1965. So I was maybe 3.5 years old, something like that. They had several opening matches on the card. The second match of the night was Corsica Joe, Nashville guy, Corsica Gene, Tennessee guy, against Joe Scarpa, who later became Chief J. Strongbow, and Chief Little Eagle was the second match of the night. The next match was Tony Bourne against Jesse James. Then came the Von Brauners, who all over the place, including Top Hills in Tennessee. Von Brauners against Ray Gunkel and Lester Welch, who was partners in the Atlanta office right now. The Von Brauners against Ray Gunkel and Lester Welch. The final match of the night, as you see, a 10 round boxing match, two referees. One of them, of course, was Spider Galinto. The other one was former boxing champion Rocky Marciano. And the match was Mario Galinto and Buddy Fuller. This match took place on June 4th, 1965, and the name of the arena was the Ponce de Leon Ballpark. Pat, you can help me with that. Am I butchering that?
Ponce de Leon.
Okay. Rusty got it. Thank you. Okay. Who wants to go first? Somebody talk.
Mario Galinto. He's such an interesting character. I really didn't remember much about him until I heard Jerry Jarrett talking about him later on. But he was the guy, as I recall, who attacked, I believe, Jerry Lawler and or Jerry Jarrett in the ring during TV on a Saturday, probably still when they were at Channel 13, and was not on the card, not supposed to do that. And apparently he tried to attack them in other arenas, supposedly being put up by Roy Welch. Now, I don't know the details about that or why Roy Welch would want to, truly attack Lawler or Jarrett. But, I always thought that fascinating. Supposedly Jerry Jarrett put out Mario Galinto's eye and various other things, and then he kind of fell out of sight, I guess.
Chris, Atlanta, Georgia.
The fact that they got Rocky Marciano on I know boxing was big in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, and maybe even in the 70s. Marciano was the only undefeated heavyweight champion ever. And
1965.
yeah, So in 65, I can't remember how old he would have been, but I don't know that he would have been that big a draw in Atlanta, Georgia. I just don't. I don't know that if you'd had him on the card in New York, I think it would have drawn more. I don't really understand the dynamic of Marciano being on that card because I mean he's a big name. He's one of the greatest boxers of all time.
Now, little history, and we'll go into Alabama and Mobile, Alabama. The biggest crowd at the time in the history of Atlanta promotion was this main event. So obviously it did draw. The
Yes.
biggest ever live attendance in the history of Mobile, Alabama, Pat, was this same main event. Buddy Fuller against Galento with Rocky Marciano as the special referee. So I wasn't alive. Well, I was alive. I just wasn't watching boxing, and so I wouldn't have bought a ticket to see that son of a gun.
Yeah, but Marciano was that big. See, I mean, obviously I wasn't born yet, so he would have been that big a draw. I just wasn't sure about being in the southern United States, but obviously, based on it, like Bo said, he drew 30,000. I mean, he obviously was a draw.
I don't know, Chris. I mean, I suspect he showed up because, like most boxers of that era, it's like Mike Tyson said, "I know where my money is. Don King's got my money."
Yeah, they were doing it for a payoff, no doubt about it, Pat. And it's just so interesting seeing that card and seeing the Ray Gunkel, Les Wells, seeing the Von Bronners on that card. It's just a very interesting card. And again, it's in 1965, Rusty.
Go ahead.
Pat, let's go with Pat first.
Well, I've got a question. What is the relationship between Buddy Fuller, who was a Welch, and Les Welch?
I think
Probably an uncle, right? In that Lester Welch?
I think it might. Buddy Fuller and Lester Welch. I'm pretty much thinking that brothers or cousins or something like that. I am thinking Bo should.
Bo knows.
And
Yep.
Bo also says boxing champions were called the king of men when they were the king of sports pages. If you lived in the south outside of Miami, how and where else could you see them other than at the wrestling matches? And I'm sure there is a lot of truth to that. Just a very interesting card. And we'll go about 6 years after that. We'll go.
Hey, Randy, can I say something real quick?
Yes, sir.
So I was having this conversation today about sports figures were bigger than life. Before we had social media and before we had cable TV, sports figures were bigger than life because of word of mouth and the newspaper. You had to imagine them. You had to listen on the radio and visualize it in your mind. And the word of mouth, you only heard about these guys. So like Bo said, they ever saw Marciano fight. The only way they were ever going to see the only undefeated champion ever was to go see him in a wrestling match. But they had only heard about him. And that we don't have that mystique anymore because it's all right there at our fingertips.
And Bo answers the question, and Adam had it up on the screen, but Lester Welch is Buddy's uncle. And I feel this next card is Atlanta 1974, Atlanta 5/31, 1974, and I don't have a number up there, so if you just, there it is. They're back in the Omni. We saw one of the original cards of the Omni last week on Talking Memphis Wrestling. The show opened with 4 opening matches, and then look at this card. I mean, just you can imagine by this point, I would guess that wrestling was on television, on TBS at that point. 4 opening matches to start the card, then a Georgia Tag Team Championship match with Ole and Gene Anderson, the hottest heels in the territory at the time, against the babyface team that ended up all over Continental and Southeastern wrestling, and big stars in Memphis and all over Florida, Georgia, all over. Robert Fuller, Bob Armstrong, and the Anderson brothers, we all the time when we read these cards, we say after we finish the card which match we'd rather see. So keep that in mind, guys, when we're reading the card. I like to know these opening four matches, but boy, that Georgia tag title, Ole and Gene Anderson against Robert Fuller and Bob Armstrong. The next match for the Southern States, and that's probably a made up title, the brother of former world champion, or maybe even current world champion, Jack Briscoe, Jerry Briscoe, against Pat Patterson in Atlanta. That surprised me. Then, Georgia Championship. This is before the famous airplane wreck that finished Buddy Coates' career. Buddy Coates against Mr. Wrestling 2. And so this is in the era of Jack Briscoe as the NWA champion. As you see right there, the semifinal match was the NWA World Heavyweight Championship match. That was Jack Briscoe defending against the future American Dream, Dusty Rhodes. Now, probably, as world title matches were always the last match on the card, but due to this being a steel cage match, and it's a match until I saw this card, I wasn't aware of the fact that this ever happened. The booker of the territory probably at this time was Cowboy Bill Watts. Cowboy Bill Watts and Bo. I know Georgia had a Southern title, but I didn't know it was called a Southern States title. Maybe they just put that here. But the main event, Andre the Giant against Cowboy Bill Watts, just the Omni. And by 74, were we watching Georgia wrestling on TBS? When did we get cable in Jonesboro, Chris?
76.
Okay, so we weren't watching the show by that point.
No, not yet.
Boy, that's interesting. You all had cable before we did in Memphis.
Really?
It just come to Memphis in what was called Midtown Memphis in 78 or so, but it didn't, but that was a relatively limited area. It did not come out to any of the suburbs until maybe 81, 82, something like that.
We
really?
We got it in Jonesboro in the mid to late 76 because the Braves, you got to watch the Braves. They were we didn't get to see the full season. 77 was the first full season of Braves baseball, and obviously Georgia Championship Wrestling in that era. I remember that vividly.
See, we had cable in Talladega since 72, and I saw Georgia. This was Georgia Championship Wrestling. The Briscoe brothers and Dusty were not drop-ins, but they weren't there every Saturday. They were wrestling in Florida too, and the truth of the matter is that's probably why a world title match was second on the card, because number one, Andre the Giant, you could have put the five of us on the rest of the card and brought Andre at this point in time, and it was sold out.
Let's put Bo's comment up here. Adam, if you can, go ahead and put Bo's comment up.
And as the Anderson brothers, Randy, that could possibly be Lars and Ole or Gene.
Yeah,
most likely it was Ole and Gene, but Lars would wrestle with them as the Anderson brothers every now and then.
Yeah, you're right for that. And Bo says this was Andre's first trip to Atlanta. In just about 3 months, he started being booked by Vince Sr., and Vince booked him for all the territories. Van Wilhite from Jonesboro said he did move to Jonesboro in the summer of 1977 and found Georgia Championship Wrestling his first Saturday here. Van, it's good to have a fellow Jonesboroite. There's three of us here, Randy, Chris, and now Van Will Horton, Degum. We have a Memphis guy and a Degum Alabama guy, and heck with that, we are Jonesboro born, Jonesboro bred. I don't know about Chris, but when Randy Hills dies, I'll be Jonesboro, Arkansas dead and damn proud of it. This is a great card. So, of this card, Chris, which match would you like to see?
Well, actually, it's two for me: Briscoe and Dusty Rhodes for the world title, because I always like to watch Jack Briscoe work. And then Rhodes had charisma and entertaining. And then the tag match, the Andersons against Bob and Robert Fuller. I didn't realize when you look at this, Ole had was in Georgia a long time. Everybody talks about the King being in Memphis for years. I mean, obviously not near as long, but Ole was in Georgia a long time. He had a long run.
Same philosophy. Why go somewhere else if you're doing so good where you are? And by the way, apparently I didn't put this together. You might have told me before, Chris. You and I have been good friends forever. Van, who said earlier he moved here in 1977, he said, Chris and I have been good friends for years.
We coached baseball together.
Oh, is that right?
We coached some championship baseball teams together. We actually played in a Little League tournament ball together for Otasco back in the day, like about 46, 47 years ago. Long time. Y'all, Van and I go way back.
So Richard saying Lars didn't show up, Pat, with the back with the Andersons until after '74. So I appreciate everybody being engaged in this show. So that is Pat's two matches he'd like to see. How about you, Rusty, of this card? What would you like to see?
Boy, I was a huge fan of Andre the Giant. Still am a fan of Andre. I would have paid to see Andre come in and fight, as you said, almost anybody. I realized the Briscoe Rhodes match would have been terrific. At that time, so in 1974, yeah, Andre would have done it for me without question.
You know, and if you, not to interrupt, but if you look at that picture of him, and if you've ever seen film of Andre in this era, he could drop kick, he could move. I mean, it was really something to see. It wasn't the Andre of WrestleMania 3 at all. The guy was incredibly athletic.
Right. I remember him coming to Memphis a time or two when he could still do those things. You just thought it was fascinating. He was amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think we are all agreement. This is a hell of a card, and I think every one of us would like to have been there to see that. Is that right, guys?
Yes, no doubt.
Yeah. That's got a flavor of wrestling. But you know, the best Omni Atlanta wrestling was really a mix of Eddie Graham's Florida territory and the traditional Atlanta crew, and that's exactly what that card is.
Throwing a little mix in from New York, but it's basically Florida and Georgia. As PJ says, Andre could Andre drop kick? She says, "Wow!" And absolutely,
it was true.
It was certainly not the WrestleMania type that Pat says. It was a whole different story. We'll go back to the Memphis territory with 4081. June 1972. This is Memphis, Tennessee. This is the program insert as we're looking at 4081. What always amazes me, and this is the back of the 25-cent program, and I do have some questions here, but it's a 3-match card. Every match would have been 2 out of 3 fall, and the opening match of the night. And the funny thing, Pat, I know you want to say something. The funny thing about this, if you look at every match, there's nobody on this card that hadn't been or couldn't in the future be main event of this card. So, Pat, before I read this card, you had waved your hand.
Yeah. What's the date of this?
The date of this is June of 1972.
Okay.
June of
Okay.
72, the opening match, Bobby Hart and Lorenzo Parente against Eddie Marlin and Tommy Gilbert, a tag team that was normally semifinal match and normally the top regular babyface tag team in the territory. And so that was the opening match of the night. The second match of the night in Memphis, Tennessee at the Mid-South Coliseum on June of 1972 was the fabulous Kangaroos, and this was Al Costello and Don Kent, and this is the Kangaroos that me and you used to see in Jonesboro. If you were going to the matches in 1972, you'd have been a pretty young guy there. But the fabulous Kangaroos with manager George Crybaby Cannon against Don Green uh, and Charlie Cook. I typed this wrong on my notes, but it was Charlie Cook and Don Green against the fabulous Kangaroos in the main event. Jerry Lawler and manager Sam Bass with Jerry Lawler's tag team partner Jim White. He might have been hurt during this time in 72. This is at the beginning of the Lawler Bass White run in Memphis that was tremendous. Lawler and Bass against Joey Rossi, who I don't remember much in Memphis, and Jerry Jarrett. Lynn Rossi in the babyface corner, and Lee Williams was the other second. Lynn Rossi and Lee Williams was the seconds of Joey Rossi and Jerry Jarrett, and I have no idea who Lee Williams is. Can anybody help me on this?
Not no. Nope.
Interesting card. We'll go with Pat first.
It is an interesting card, and you know you didn't see Lynn Rossi in Memphis very much, particularly well obviously after the split. But you know I don't think Lynn and Jerry Jarrett ever really got along by what Jerry has told me, and they had an incident very early in Jerry's career where they were, you know, he was supposed to put something over in a match in Huntsville, and Lynn got mad at him and all that. You know, Joey was actually a pretty good young wrestler, and you know ended up dying early, but was a city councilman in Franklin, Tennessee, or Cool Springs, Tennessee, and a you know kind of a community leader. But I, I you know it's interesting. Randy, did you ever book a 2 out of 3 fall match? And when did that stop being a thing?
Yeah, and I did. Because it was like a special attraction, and we would do it every once in a while. It was a heavyweight thing until probably 76
Yeah.
or 77 in Memphis. You can tell in 1972 you had to do it. There's just 3 matches on the card, and you look at this probably drew 8,000 people, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 14, 16 wrestlers, managers, 2 referees, 18 people to pay on this card, and ticket prices I would guess are $2, $3, and $4.
All right. Let me ask you another thing, just for my own edification. When there were 2 or 3 matches, 2 or 3 fall matches, did the wrestlers go back to the dressing room between falls?
In Jonesboro, they absolutely used to do it for sure.
They
Memphis, I think.
they
I
they
remember them doing that in Memphis also.
they did that at Battle Auditorium in Birmingham, and that you know our psyche is such that we want immediate gratification and all that. But I remember distinctly them going back for 5 or so minutes between each fall
Yes.
and then coming back out.
And that's what I remember in Jonesboro for sure. Bo James, before we get Chris's opinion on this Memphis card in 1972, he says, RH, funny story. Around this time, the Kangaroos came to Knoxville for the first time. They don't want to put over Ron and Don Wright. It turns into a fight. Don said as wrestlers, they stressed us, but they couldn't fight worth a shit, and that George Cannon started it. So that is a funny story. You don't mess with East Tennessee hillbillies, man.
You're not going to mess with Ron and Don Wright in Knoxville for
No,
sure.
not for sure. Very interesting card, Rusty.
Oh yeah, my probably two favorite tag teams of all time, and I go back and forth on which should be number one, are the Fabulous Kangaroos and the Fabulous Freebirds. So there are two different eras, but boy, I loved the Kangaroos. They
Yeah.
came to the ring with the music, Waltzing Matilda or whatever it was. One of the very first teams to actually have music to come to the ring with. So I really got a kick out of the Kangaroos. I think Al Costello was kind of the leader of the Kangaroos, as I recall, because I think I saw him with more than one partner as a Kangaroo in Memphis at various times. But yeah, that would have been probably the match I was most interested in, was the Kangaroos.
Chris?
Well, three tag matches on the card, because back in that era, tag team wrestling was probably more common than one-on-one wrestling. I didn't ever realize that this is a little bit before my memory. I can remember 74. Obviously, my grandfather was taking me in 72. I just can't recall it. I never knew Don Green worked with Charlie Cook. I remember Charlie Cook. I obviously remember Don Green. Do not remember them ever being a tag team. Do not recall that at all. And I do not know who Joey Rossi is at all.
Lynn Rossi, of course, you probably remember Lynn Rossi. That was his son, wrestled more in the Birmingham, Chattanooga, Nashville area, but he did wrestle some there. And so my question to all three of you, look at this card, and I want Adam, our producer Adam Dunn, to keep that card up there. I want all three of you to rank quality. I'm not saying who drew the most money or anything else. At this time in 1972, name me the two best workers on this card. 1 and 2.
Lawler and Don Green.
I was going to say Don Green for sure.
I would say Don Green 1. Don Green 1,
Gilbert?
Jerry Lawler 2. He was early in the business. If you say throughout their career, it would be Lawler for sure.
Right.
But I would say Don Green, Jerry Lawler. Then for his pure working, I'd say Tommy Gilbert. Tommy Gilbert was great, man. Also, Don Kent, Al Costello. I'm not sure about Joey Rossi. Jerry Jarrett could sell. Jerry Jarrett was a very good worker. Sam Bass was good at what he did. Jim White was good. Eddie Marlin was very good. Bobby Hart, great. Lorenzo Parenti, great. There's just a lot of great talent on this card, Pat Trammell.
There is absolutely a lot of great talent on that card when you look at it. It really, really is.
We'll move to Nashville, Tennessee on June the 5th, 1975. This is 4086. Love this segment. As we started doing this, man, I don't know if we'll ever end up losing cards where we can't see a card. And Thomas Bruff says Don Green was one of the best ever, and I absolutely agree. You can almost tell the similarities and the difference 200 miles away between Memphis, Tennessee in 75 and what they were doing in Memphis in 1975. And we'll take a look at that card. And I have no idea who Mr. Wrestling is. Nick would put anybody out there under a mask and call them whoever. So Mr. Wrestling against Mr. Suzuki. Then Steve Kovacs, who wrestled in Mid-South Wrestling as Stephen Little Bear, against Norvell Austin. Remember, this is June 5th, 1975 at the Fairgrounds in Nashville, Tennessee. Then Jimmy Golden, obviously part of the Welch family, against Steve Kyle, who wrestled in Alabama and Mobile as Steve Lawler. Then In June 15th, 1975, after George Barnes had moved back to Australia, Bill Dundee was still a heel. Tojo Yamamoto in a judo jacket match against Bill Superstar Dundee. In the main event, Carl
What the
Von.
hell is a judo jacket match?
Oh, I was going to ask the same thing. I have no idea.
They just wear a judo jacket to the ring and they say karate's legal. It was bullshit. It wasn't exciting. It wasn't exciting at all. So, Carl von Steiger and Otto von Heller with Sam Bass against Jackie Fargo and Crazy Luke Graham. Pat, you mentioned judo jacket match. The interesting thing to me in '75, there's 5 matches on this card.
There is 5 matches on the card. Yeah, Bo thinks that may be Dick Steinborn, which I think is probably a pretty good guess.
In 1975, I think so, uh, as as well. Do you agree uh, with me? It's and Van says, in his opinion, Tommy Gilbert and Ricky Gibson were a lot of alike in the ring and on the mic. And I think in the ring, Tommy was a tad better, and on the mic, Rick Gibson was a lot better than Tommy. So, it was just a great team. So, Memphis against Nashville, what do you think of the cards? Pat?
I mean, I like the cards. I mean, I know that Von Steiger and Von Heller were a very classic, German heel team. Luke Graham, I think, wrestled in Florida a good bit. I don't know how much he was up here. I don't remember seeing him in Birmingham. Um, Jimmy Golden at this era of time was a very big baby face in Nashville and in Birmingham. Um, he would wrestle individually, and he and Robert Fuller would wrestle a lot together. I think Norvell Austin is one of the underrated workers of this era. I love to watch Norvell work.
Chris, your opinion of this card from the fairgrounds in Nashville, Tennessee. This building is not there any longer. This is 1975. It was 2 buildings ago, as a matter of fact. Chris, Pat, this wasn't even the building you went to on the NWA World Title match that you saw in Nashville. It was another building on the fairgrounds. Chris, your opinion on this card in June of 1975, June the 4th.
Well, the thing I thought of, Pat mentioned Crazy Luke Graham, was like maybe he was brought in as his special. I'm bringing in Luke Graham to help do, maybe he didn't work the territory all the time. I'd like to saw Tojo and Bill Dundee. I think that'd been a great match in '75. I agree with Pat that Norvell was underrated and I loved what he did with Coco with the PYT more so than what he did as part of the Midnight Express. But I always liked Norvell. And my first thought, Randy said it right off the bat, Steve Kyle, my memory of him, other than being Steve Lawler, first time I ever saw, I didn't know who Mighty Igor was.
Yes.
I never knew who Mighty Igor was. And so Steve Kyle's on Memphis TV. Well, then we get cable and we get New York, and there's Mighty Igor. And hell, back then I thought it was the same guy. What's he doing there? Because they wore the white top with the black over the white and same gimmick. I had no clue back then that they weren't the same person.
Interesting thing, and before we go to Rusty for his opinion on this card, Tony says at the Tupelo, this is funny. Tony says at the Tupelo Sports Arena, there was a big hole in the wall and someone wrote above it, Luke Graham was here. As a kid, I popped every time I saw that. And Luke Graham was notorious about having his whiskey in the dressing room and being pretty well wasted that night. But this is an interesting card, and the interesting part, as Bo says, Luke worked for Nick a long time. He had a long program with Jackie Fargo, then turned and teamed with Fargo. Luke, I remember him in Jonesboro, seeing him at the Jonesboro matches and hearing from Eddie and other people that had issues showing up straight, and a lot of the wrestlers did because the drug of choice back then was drinking. That in 1975, for sure. How about you, Rusty? What do you think about this Nashville card in 1975?
Oh yeah, the most interesting team there is Jackie Fargo and Crazy Luke Graham. They were Crazy Luke Graham was nuts. I actually heard about a lot about him when I lived in Amarillo. Apparently, Crazy Luke Graham wrestled in that West Texas, New Mexico territory for quite a bit. And Terry Funk used to tell stories about him. One of the stories I remember Terry saying about Crazy Luke Graham was that Luke at one point was on the road with Terry and Dory Jr., and he wanted to dye his suit black. So he got like some of the Ritz dye or whatever they call that stuff. Put it in the bathtub, filled the bathtub up with water with black Ritz dye, and then jumped in the bathroom tub with the suit on, with him wearing it to dye it all black. So, Crazy Luke Graham was capable of anything.
That is a classic story. I've never heard that one at all. Very interesting card in Nashville. We'll go 50 miles away from us, Chris, or away from where we were born, but not away from, it's further than that from where you are right now in Southside, Arkansas. We'll go to Blytheville, Arkansas, 51 miles down the road. This is 4085. This is Blytheville always had boring ass newspaper ads. There's no doubt about that. And I'll put my glasses on so I can see it said. And this couldn't be right. It says general admission 150, children 75 cents, and ringside 50 cents. So I think that's all bogus. That I would say ringside was probably two, something like that. General admission 150, and children 75. A 10-minute time limit opening match. Tommy Rich and Sam Bass in a single match. Then a 2 out of 3 fall tag team match. Rosie Jones and Randy Fargo, the legit nephew of Jackie Fargo, that didn't come around a whole lot. And Bo James saying real quick that Dr. Jerry Graham, who was criminally insane, not crazy, Luke Graham. So
Bo may be right. I may be confusing Luke Graham with Jerry Graham.
Yeah,
it was Terry Funk that told me that story, but I could have gotten the first name wrong.
Yeah, and that's a possibility. And Bo just loves to correct, no matter who the fact is. And we want accurate information on the show, that's for sure. Rosie Jones and Randy Fargo against Buddy Wayne and the Inferno #1 was the second match. 1 fall, 2 out of 3 fall. Then a 2 out of 3 fall main event was Jerry Lawler and Sam Bass against Tommy Rich and Plowboy Frazier. This is June the 4th, 1976, 50 miles, 51, 52 miles from your house, Chris. What do you think?
Well, this would be approximately Tommy Rich's rookie year, somewhere close to that window. So I remember that well. This is after the Plowboy turn against Lawler and Sam after the diamond ring, the fake diamond ring on TV deal. I can remember that, obviously.
Oh, that was great.
John, just a little trivia fact. Blytheville had its own newspaper back then. Blytheville had a local newspaper. They may have got the Jonesboro paper as well, but Blytheville had a paper.
I think it was called the Blytheville Courier Journal.
Correct. Yeah, that's what it was called. So Blytheville had their own paper. So part of their ads may be from the level of news media that lived in Blytheville, Arkansas. So, and just another trivia fact. When I was born in '66, Blytheville was bigger than Jonesboro. Blytheville had 21,000 people and Jonesboro had 18, if I remember right. And now Jonesboro has 100,000 and Blytheville has 10. So
Yeah, absolutely. American Combat Association say, do we remember his coach uh, and mentor, the late Billy Wicks? Absolutely, 100%. He and Spud Monroe, one of the greatest feuds of all times. Bo James says the Inferno is probably Curtis Smith, the brother of the original Inferno, Rocky Smith. At this time, Rocky's living in Kingsport and owns a restaurant. He was wrestling in East Tennessee. So we talked to Chris about this Bible card. Now we'll talk to Pat Trammell.
Well, it's a when did Sam Bass stop wrestling?
He would wrestle opening matches and that sort of thing up until the time he passed away.
Okay, I just never, I knew he, kind of picked up being Lawler's manager, and I remember him wrestling in Birmingham, but I didn't know if he got injured or something like that. I mean, he didn't seem to be that very old. But could you put the card back up there, Adam, please? You know, I yes, you're right, Chris. That probably is Tommy Rich's close to rookie year, and Lawler and Bass, I assume, are the heel team here, and
Yes.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Tommy debuted in 1975,
Okay.
about January of 1975, if memory serves me correct. And again, Lawler and Bass, Tommy Rich and Plyboy Frazier. This is around the time that Plyboy Frazier was switched babyface. So this is a good card. And let's look at this here. It said because we have Tommy Rich and Sam Bass working twice. We got one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, 8 guys, 9 guys, 9 guys on the card. So it would probably drew 500 people. Lucky as hell. Probably a $700 or $800 house for that. What do you think about this card there, Dr. Robinson?
I can tell you my Tommy Rich story. Tommy was either a year or 2 years before me graduating from high school, and he was from Hendersonville, I believe it was. And my school, which was Christian Brothers High School in Memphis, played his team in the state high school football playoffs that year, which would have been his senior year. And I remember he ran. I think he was either running back or quarterback, but he ran for something like 150 yards in that game on Christian Brothers defense, which was very good that year. And he played on the defense. I think he was a linebacker on defense, and he punted for that team. So he was a good athlete all the way around. I remember seeing him then, and I didn't know he got into wrestling until a couple years later when he showed up on Memphis TV.
And his dad and Eddie Marlin was best of friends, and Jerry Jarrett helped train him and all that. Just a very interesting card. Anybody else want to say anything about this Bible card, Pat?
Well, Rosie Jones.
Okay,
SD Jones, right?
I'm not sure.
Rosie Jones was SD Jones, if my memory serves me. And again, you saw him in Memphis. Nothing special, nothing that jumped out at you. And then you turn on MSG on USA Network, and there he is. And I don't know if he ever won a match but he had a huge following in New York. He was a fan favorite, but I don't recall him ever winning. But I'm pretty sure that was him.
We are not only going to change cities, we are going to change states, and we're going to change countries. And I think this is very interesting. We are going to go with graphic number 4068. This is from AWA Country. This is June 28th, 1979 at the Winnipeg, Alberta, Canada Convention Center, a part of the AWA. Ron Ritchie against Buddy Wolf. Lord Al Hayes against Billy Robertson. Jesse the Body Ventura against Paul Ellering. Wahoo McDaniel and Greg Gagne against Stan Hansen and Bobby Duncan. Then a AWA World Championship match, Nick Bonkwinkel against the Super Destroyer. And the last match of the night, AWA World Tag Team Championship, the team of Vern Gagne and Mad Dog Maurice Vachon against Pat Patterson and Ray Stevens, one of the great tag teams of all time. This card from Winnipeg, Canada. We're not used to Pat going out of the country to do our wrestling, but a very impressive AWA card, without a doubt.
There's no question. What year was this again?
1979 on July 28th.
You know, I don't know how much Wahoo wrestled in AWA. Maybe more than I thought. I know Hanson did a good bit, and the rest of those are fairly look pretty much like the regulars there. Although I know Pat Patterson and Ray Stevens wrestled in New York a lot, but I mean, that's a card I'd pay to see. There's no question about that.
Oh, well, I mean, I've heard that Pat Patterson and Ray Stevens, people that seen them, was the greatest tag team ever, and certainly Ray Stevens and Nick Bockwinkel was a great thing. I was asking you about best workers. Right now, I'm looking at this card, and there's so many great workers. I would say probably on this card, work-wise, Nick Bockwinkel number one. I would also put Ray Stevens pretty high on the list as far as drawing money. I think you'd have to say Vern Gagne. He was just owned the company and he was around a long time. But William, we have traveled to Winnipeg for a AWA show. What do you think of this card?
Yeah, I'm sorry I had to step away for a minute, but yeah, I saw this, pulled it up and looked at it. You know, one interesting thing, what about Billy Robinson? You know, I know he was a great shoot guy also, but I thought Billy could work pretty well. I might have put him up there with the workers also.
Yeah, I just heard he's a bull. I probably heard enough personal bad things about him. I just don't like him in my head. But and I've met him, and he was cool to a ring announcer for sure. And he was here the year that Jerry Lawler had the broken leg, and
Right.
Jerry brought Tony Charles in and turned it into more of a wrestling type of territory, kind of holding the fort down until Jerry
Yeah, it was
Lawler got.
1980.
Yeah. Chris, this card in Winnipeg.
Well, there's a lot of talent on this card as well. From what I've read and heard about Ray Stevens, I wish I'd got to see him more because I've heard how great a talent he was and how good an athlete and worker that he was. Obviously, I've always thought Bockwinkel was great. I don't remember Lord Alfred Hayes working. I remember him for being an announcer in WWF. I'm like Randy. I'm kind of jaded about Billy Robinson. I never heard anything good about the guy. It's always negative about what kind of guy he was. And
A bully.
he lived in Little Rock at the end of his life, which
Yeah.
I found interesting. And along with Colonel Buck Robley, lived in Little Rock at the end of his life.
Right.
Anyway, Wahoo, speaking of great athletes, Wahoo, in a lot of ways, was like Jackie Fargo in the fact that he had relationships with big time, athletes, music stars, all that. But Wahoo was a great football player, a great golfer, a tremendous athlete was Wahoo McDaniel, and tough as hell.
Few more cards to go. As Richard says, Billy Robinson would try to hurt people. We want to get through this because we have a picture section.
Okay, I stand corrected about Billy Robinson. I withdraw my comment.
No, you can like or dislike whoever you want, and work-wise and tough-wise, there's no doubt. Work-wise, and no, we're all allowed whatever opinions that we have to have. Want to go to this?
Hell, Doc, you can like Terry Taylor. It's okay.
I like Terry Taylor a hell of a lot better than you do. I guarantee you that. I've never heard anybody in my life that dislikes him as bad. However, listen to Jeff Jarrett's podcast today, boys. He's talking about R-Truth, I'm getting in the weeds here. Jeff's talking about R-Truth and what's going on. R-Truth worked for Jeff and TNA, and Terry Taylor was one of the talent relations people, and R-Truth, who I didn't know he's ever said anything bad about anybody. R-Truth dislikes Terry Taylor worse than you do, Chris.
Hey, that makes me feel good because the last card I ever wrestled on, Brian Christopher was on, the Barbarian, and Ron the Truth Killings. I was in the dressing room with R-Truth. So I'm glad to know we share that.
What a smart son of a gun Ron Killings is, and we'll get to that a little later, but that's an interesting card. And
Randy, what do you think the story behind that is? Was that a shoot? A work? I mean, what's going on? I mean, they cut him loose and then brought him back 3 days later.
I think, and I was going to close the show with that.
Well,
today.
Go ahead and do that.
I could talk for 45 minutes, and we don't have 45 minutes left in the show. But basically, just real quick, and we'll get more into it. But real quick, I think that corporate people was looking at the monies. R-Truth was a Vince McMahon guy. R-Truth was part-time and probably was making $2 or $3 million a year, and they was looking at it dollar and cents, Pat, something like that, and say, well, we got people working all the time that's not making that sort of money. So they made that decision as one of the things that I'm hearing speculated. I'm not in that office, so I don't know, but they were shocked. TKO was shocked at the outcry from the audience, where Ron Killings, he's the one that went to his social media and put it out there. Didn't knock him. I'm sorry to tell you, just got released from the WWE, and there was an outcry of people supporting him and outcry in the dressing room. And then all of a sudden, they came back to him and said, hey, we're going to bring you back. Let's rebuild. And he said, well, let's talk about the money. I need it to be a little more. I need to be a lot more. And by the way, instead of R-Truth, said I got a career after wrestling. I need to be called my real name that I own, Ron Killings, all that sort of thing. I think he's a big businessman, and I think Pat, real quick, that was rambling, but I think Ron the Truth Killings had the last laugh, and when he returned at that Saturday night main event last week, you know how many YouTube hits that got? 40 million hits on YouTube.
Wow.
40 million hits on YouTube. You know what the number one t-shirt is right now in the WWE?
Yeah.
Ron Killings. Wow.
Yeah.
So he got the last.
Randy, I think you're probably right about that. And I think TKO doesn't realize the degree of loyalty that wrestling fans develop to their guys who have been there for a long time. They think it's more like MMA guys that come and go with regularity. And the longer a wrestling guy makes it around, the more popular it becomes, even if he's not necessarily always on the show. And I don't think TKO realized that until this incident.
And they realized when they saw those numbers. To TKO, having 40 million views overnight they don't get that in UFC or anywhere else. It was amazing to them, and they come to Jesus, and they're new in the business, and they corrected that. Chris, you'll like this next card. 4084. 4084. This is June the 4th, 1983. This is Nashville, Tennessee, at the Fairgrounds Sports Arena. This is the new sports arena, Pat, that you went on. Robert Gibson against one of the Bruise Brothers. Dutch Mantell against one of the Grapplers. Rick Morton against one of the Bruise Brothers. Now, the Bruise Brothers was Troy Graham, the Dream Machine, and Pork Chop Cash at this time. Rick Morton against one of the Bruise Brothers. Then Tiger Lee against the Grapplers. The Grapplers were the Dirty White Boy and Lynn Denton. Then it was Tommy Gilbert and Carl Fergie in a match against Sonny King and the Angel. A 8-man tag team match with Stagger Lee, Dutch Mantell, and the Rock and Roll Express against the Grapplers and the Bruise Brothers. And this is what we're going to lead off. A spectacular card, the biggest main event you could have. It's sold out in Memphis, in Louisville, in Evansville, in Lexington, in Evansville, every town in the territory. This followed a couple of days later in Memphis in the what Chris Ellis and I say the greatest matches of all time. So on June the 4th, 1983, Southern Heavyweight title, loser leave town, Bill Dundee, Jerry Lawler, the main event on this card. Saturday, June 4th, 1983, Nashville Sports Arena. Bill Dundee, gone from Memphis. He first debuted in the territory in 1975. In late 75, switched babyface. In early 83, switched heel. They built for Lawler and Dundee, who in 1977 had the longest running single program in Jarrett promotion history. And they out to do it again. And in this particular one, Bill Dundee was set packing, and this is history in the making. And this is your passion. And this I turn over to my buddy Chris Ellis.
Well, this is 2 days before as you said, the greatest wrestling match of all time. And if people don't understand wrestling, get on YouTube and type in Lawler Dundee, loser leave town, 6683, hit play. You don't have to say a word. They'll understand what wrestling is and was. A lot of good names on this card. I mean, Ricky Morton, Robert Gibson, Dutch is on here, Coco's on here. I thought that Lynn Denton was a good worker. Dream Machine and Pork Chop were good. There's a lot of depth to this card and a lot of reasons to go. But Lawler and Dundee were, they fed off each other. They made each other great. They made each other better. Real life, as it's been discussed before, real life friction, jealousy, competitiveness, whatever you want to say. I would love to see footage of this match to compare it to the 6683 match, just out of my own curiosity. But I mean, I'll be hard pressed to convince that anything's better than the one on June the 6th.
Dr. Robinson.
One thing I noticed about this is how many of the guys worked twice in that card. Like most of them ended up working 2 matches. And I guess they figured they could get away with that because the Lawler Dundee match was really the drawing card. Nothing else really, or that's all they needed to draw was Lawler and Dundee and a loser leave town. So they kept the cost down, I guess, by having most of the rest of the guys work twice.
There's no doubt about it. This is Lawler Dundee, one more time, Pat Trammell.
It's interesting. We got 7 matches here, and as Doc pointed out, we've got guys working 2 or 3 times. Isn't that a Randy as a promoter? Isn't that a lot of matches? Because I have to believe Dundee and Lawler went 25 minutes minimum, right?
Yeah, and if you look at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 matches at that time. Nashville would probably do every week 5 to 6 matches, so that's not too much. And this is Jerry Lawler booking, so for a Lawler book card, that's not a lot of matches. Lawler like doing 13 or 14.
Okay.
He really did, no doubt about it. We're going to
skip. Randy, any chance they were running another show like in Jonesboro this night?
In 1983,
Crew.
Who would have been on it?
No, I'm just asking. I don't have a clue. I'm just saying since they worked all these guys twice, I didn't know how many were how many they were.
Well, maybe I mean
What about Jim
it ain't
Cornette? Was he still on the card in June of '83? He might have gone somewhere else.
no by he might have been in Jonesboro. You might be right, Chris, because the fabulous ones were in the territory at that point too. So I think y'all are right. I think that's a possibility. We're going to skip right now and breeze through the photos of the week on today's Talking Memphis Wrestling. I think you will like these two, Pat, and we'll let you just describe them. This is 4064, and then we'll go with 4070. Adam, 4064, then 4070. And here we go. And this is in Chattanooga, Tennessee, Pat.
Okay, a young Lawler, I guess, and Nick with that wide tie. The knot's as big as your fist there. What year is this, Randy?
I would guess 74.
Okay.
So we'll go ahead and look at the second one, 4070. Pat?
Is that Nick?
That's Nick and Lawler.
Okay. I don't know that I've ever seen a side picture of Nick, but that's pretty funny.
And they're horsing around, no doubt about it. Hey, Chris, what do you think of those two pictures of Nick Goulas and Jerry Lawler?
So I don't remember Nick that well because the split happened not long after I was old enough to remember. And is Lawler imitating Nick or Lance Russell in that picture?
Probably in that picture, Nick.
Okay.
Probably had just used that morning with Lance, and then he switched it over. What did you think about Nick Goulas there, William?
I had seen that first picture before, the one where they're looking at the camera and Nick has that great tie on. I had not seen the one from the side, though. And I think you're right. I remember Lawler with the funny nose and glasses talking to Lance. So that could very well have been what it was. He had him talk to Lance in the morning, then he went to Nashville in the evening, and he put him on again.
Let's put up Adam Thomas's comment. He says that his assumption is that the venue is one reason that Nashville might have had a venue as good as large as the Mid-South Coliseum. There was a Nashville municipal auditorium downtown Nashville, but it was more expensive, so we wrestled at the Fairground Sports Arena. I would guess capacity 2,500 to 3,000 people, where the Mid-South Coliseum was closer to 12,000 people.
What was the Ellis Auditorium,
Thomas,
Randy?
Six?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to step on you.
No.
6,000.
Okay.
You know, what I was going to say is Thomas might not be aware. Memphis was considerably larger than Nashville in that time. You know, in the 1970s, Memphis was over 600,000, and Nashville was probably a third less than that. And Memphis was always a much bigger wrestling, or was much more popular in Memphis, particularly with the black crowd in Memphis. So that's why Memphis always drew more to wrestling than Nashville.
Quick takes on the rest of these as we will look at 4071, and Pat Trammell will describe this one.
Is that Don and Al Green?
And Sir Steve Clemens.
Sir Steve Clemens, absolutely. I don't know where that is. I see we've got a hammer involved.
Yeah, I see that too. Man, the greens just look rough and tough, Chris.
The greens, you know, I have there's, and Rusty may have some insight on this, being a physician and all. When I see some people, I smell them. And when I see the greens, I smell sweat. And I smell evil. If that makes any sense at all.
Absolutely.
Both things.
You could legitimately believe, and I certainly did, that the Greens were badass tough guys that you know, took no quarter back in those days.
Both thinks this picture is in Huntsville, Alabama. Here's a good picture. 4072 of the fabulous one Jackie Fargo and Jerry Jarrett. Then we'll spend 30 seconds on this next team because, man, we talk a lot about Jackie Fargo and Jerry Jarrett, a great tag team that drew a lot of money. 40, I'm going to have to put my glasses on for this. 4095. Somebody identify this guy.
Cowboy Frankie Lane.
Yeah, Chris got it. How much did he come to Birmingham, Pat?
He came in and he was a baby face you called from out of town. He was over like a cowboy on Saturday afternoon.
Yep,
like
Cowboy Frankie Lane. He
He
came to Memphis a time or two.
Yeah, wrestled a lot in Mobile.
He and Mike Boyette were heel tag team in Memphis.
Okay, that makes sense.
Before Mike Boyette became known for losing every match, get that gimmick, But him and Frankie Lane were a tag team. Frankie Lane appeared to be a tough guy. What I was going to say about Don and Al Green on that earlier picture, for two guys that weren't really brothers, they looked like brothers.
They really did.
Yeah.
In fact, I guess I didn't realize they weren't brothers. I'd assumed that the whole time.
No.
Al Green nice thing was Denny.
4096. 4096. Who's this, Pat?
I know, but I don't know.
I'm going to say it's a young Jackie Fargo.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Fabulous Jackie Fargo, 4101.
Any idea the year of that?
I would say the late 50s, but I'm just guessing because with the cards they give me the dates. On the pictures they usually don't. So this is Jackie Fargo and Iron Mike Clancy, and I've heard that name, but I never saw him. And look at those young kids, and they're all excited to see the fabulous ones, Pat.
Yeah, I heard of Mike Clancy, but I never saw him either.
So, to Fargo's credit, I use this in the racing business, and I'm quoted on racing interviews using this phrase. If you've got $100 bills on sale for a nickel and nobody knows about it, you're not going to sell any. And look at Jackie Fargo's hair and Mike Clancy's hair. Look at Fargo's robe and Clancy's robe. Fargo got it. He got the promotional side of it, the flamboyance of it all. He got it.
No doubt, he is the star. And the last picture, and we'll take some time out of this. And I think we did a good enough job, Pat, talking about the R-Truth thing. And these, I think Paul Neighbors Jr. posted these and on Twitter, and Pat responded on Twitter. These are Jarrett promotion checks from July the 8th and July the 15th of 1983. Andy Kaufman, a check for $500 from Memphis on May the 2nd, 1983 for $500 signed by the bookkeeper, and it was Christine Jarrett's sister's husband. Bob Wright was the bookkeeper for Jarrett Promotions. We banked at the Citizens Bank, Pat, in Hendersonville, Tennessee. That first check is for $500 in a frame that Paul put up. Then he got one dated the same day in '83 for week ending. This is for everything but Memphis, and this is a hell of a check back then. 1,790. It looks like 1795 to me. Is that what you think, Pat?
Yeah, I think that's right. It may be 50 cents or something like that.
And the last check is $445. Our financial expert and guru in this show for sure. And just a personal answer to Chris' private thing, about halfway. About halfway would be the answer to that question. Pat, you're our finance guy.
Well, I mean that's a good week's work for one night. A couple of those things. Now I understood Andy never cashed the checks. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
He was doing it because that was his passion, and uh, I don't know if his family sold them or whatever the case may be, but that's pretty cool. And would you agree with Bo here, Mr. Uh, Mr. Trammell? Bo thinks that these checks are worth 4 times that amount of money in today's money.
I'd pay that for those checks today. Whoever has them.
Oh, I bet. Yep.
So, RH, would you say that Andy Kaufman is the only worker in history that didn't cash his check?
Oh yeah.
That's what I thought. He's
Not the only
he's
wrestler in
one
history
more.
that didn't get paid. I can guarantee you that. But yeah, that's just a uh, fantastic. I've enjoyed today, and we're not going to be too far past 2 hours. My uh, last take of the day is I like our new format. I like our panel, and it's good we have people come in and come out. Some people can be here some weeks. I think Chris, if I'm not wrong, won't be here next week. I think Michael will be here next week, and to have a Pat, you out?
Los Angeles, California.
You're in Los Angeles. How about you, Doc?
I'm pretty sure I'll be here.
That'll be great as well. We'll do last take, final thoughts, whatever you want to say, Chris.
Oh, I really enjoyed the show today. Going to the different regions of the country, I think it's really cool, and I'm learning a lot as we do this. So that's always fun. Next week, for all the sports fans out there, I'll be training referees, some of whom may appear on SEC basketball games during the season. So if you get pissed at a referee during the season, they're not the ones I train. They're on a different court. So just letting y'all know that all the good ones come off the courts that I'm on.
All right, Chris, we'll do in referee camp. And where is that camp?
Well, I really don't want to say.
Undisclosed location?
Undisclosed location, yeah.
Okay, that's fine. Final take, and I think I saw a thing on your Facebook, Rusty, that you're going to have a minimized version of the podcast because I guess you were on that Bigfoot hunt, but the Blues Doctor podcast will be dropping tonight at I think it's abbreviated version, but what do you have in plan for this podcast tonight?
Yes, that is correct. I was away for the Bigfoot hunt from Thursday through Sunday, and that's when we actually film, usually on Friday. So we weren't able to film until yesterday, which gave me very little time to get everything ready. So our topic will be Bigfoot, not necessarily the hunt that we had this weekend, although I do mention that, but just Bigfoot in general, just kind of summary of the points for people who are not generally familiar with Bigfoot and some of my uh, takes on the whole phenomena.
That'll be interesting. And no music this week?
Nothing but the intro and outro.
What's the running time?
I think it's 11 and a half minutes altogether.
11 and a half minutes, and that's one of when I get out in the car about 4 o'clock in the morning, I'll see if it's uploaded. Last week was, and it was a tremendous show, and I love doing it. It was about New Orleans and music and some of the mysterious things. I love it all. Pat Trammell's going to be in L.A. next week. Pat Trammell. Certainly, I always like looking at the monitor and seeing Pat loves history of anything. He especially likes history of wrestling. And Pat, your final comments tonight before we get out of here.
Well, I'll echo what Rusty and Chris said, but particularly I do like going back. You know, most of these cards today were before I think most of us were born, or right around the time we were born, and to see, as Chris said, different areas of the country, and dipping into Atlanta a little bit, which is kind of where a lot of my teeth were cut in wrestling outside of Birmingham, was interesting to see how those cards were put together and where people would draw from. So, we can talk all night, man.
And it's always fun to get together, and I have fun searching for these cards, and I don't post every card that I get. And we were able to get this through this show about 9 minutes past the time that I shoot to get us out of here, so that's not bad at all. For Chris Ellis, for Rusty Robinson, and for Pat Trammell, for all of us, and producer Adam Dunn. And first of all, I guess we'll ask Adam before we get out of here, is there any updates on our man at the ball game? Have you, as Adam's saying, no updates at all from Michael St. John at all? And we'll show the pictures we have from Toyota Field there, and the ceremonial first pitch that took place in that ball game, and you see Joshua there, and that's pretty cool as well. Again, I say, for Adam, for Rusty, for Chris, for Pat Trammell, and I'm Randy Hills. Folks, thanks for being a part of this here show. We had a blast doing it, to it like Sonny Pruitt, and I love R-Truth and kick their ass. I'm glad you got your money. Good night, everybody. Bye-bye.
Good night, guys. Good night, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Talking Memphis Wrestling with Randy Hill and special guests.